Have you ever heard of a mall that refuses to die? A place where security guards never make it to their second paycheck, and not because they quit, but because they vanish? What if I told you that somewhere in suburban America, there's a shopping mall where time rewinds, mannequins walk after midnight, and escalators carry more than just forgotten footsteps? This isn't a legend from some dusty Reddit thread. This is my story, and it started with a job offer I should have never accepted. The ad was simple: night shift security guard needed, immediate hire, no background check. The pay was too good, the hours manageable, and the location just 10 minutes from my apartment. I needed the money badly, but what I didn't know, what no one told me, was that I wasn't being hired to protect the mall. I was being offered to it. And before the night was over, I'd come face to face with something that doesn't belong in this world. Stay with me, because every detail in this story matters. Every rule, every sound, every flickering light, and if you don't listen closely, you might just miss the one thing that kept me alive. I still remember the smell of burnt coffee in my apartment that morning, the kind you make not because you want it, but because you can't afford better. Rent was due, my truck needed tires, and my fridge held more condiments than food. That's the kind of desperation that makes you overlook red flags when they're waving right in your face. The listing was buried on a local job board. Night shift security, immediate hire, no background check, $27 per hour. That last part made me blink. $27 an hour? For watching cameras? In a mall? I stared at the screen longer than I should have, expecting some catch in the fine print. But there wasn't one. No mention of previous experience required. No drug testing. No interview panel. Just a phone number. And a line that said, "Start tonight if available." Now, I've worked security most of my adult life: gas stations, 24-hour convenience stores, even a graveyard shift at a bowling alley once. It's not glamorous. Most nights, it's just you, fluorescent lights, and silence so thick it starts to hum in your ears. But this ad, it felt off. Too fast, too eager. Still, when your bank account hisses zero at you, your gut feelings get quieter. So I called. A man picked up. His voice was raspy, like someone who smoked 3 packs a day or hadn't slept in weeks. He introduced himself as Mr. Hensley, the mall's night operations manager. He asked 2 questions. Have you done overnight work before? And, can you start tonight? No paperwork, no ID check, just an address and a start time, 11 p.m. sharp. I told myself it was just the way things worked now: fast hiring, post-COVID staffing shortages. Maybe they were just desperate to keep the place open. But the moment I hung up, a weird chill ran down my spine. Not the kind that comes from fear exactly, more like when something in the air changes, and you can't explain why. When I arrived, the mall looked dead. Not quiet, dead. Empty parking lot, one flickering street light, the kind of stillness that makes you check your phone just to make sure time hasn't stopped. Mr. Hensley met me at the employee entrance. He didn't smile, didn't even introduce himself again, just nodded and said, "This way," then led me through service corridors that smelled like old carpet and bleach. The security office was tucked behind a locked metal door in the back hall. No windows, one desk, 6 monitors. The camera footage was grainy, black and white, like a cheap found footage film. He ran through the usual: patrol every hour, check cameras every 30 minutes, radio if anything looks strange. Then, almost as an afterthought, he added, "Keep an eye on the escalators, and don't linger near the play area." I raised an eyebrow. Why? He just rubbed his forehead and muttered, "Things happen there sometimes." That should have been my cue to leave. But I didn't. And here's the part that still unsettles me. I'm not the only one who noticed something was wrong. The mall has a file. It's not public, of course, but I've seen it since. After what happened, security footage logs, unexplained power surges, reports of mannequins being out of position, even a formal incident report from 3 years ago. Night guard found incoherent near food court. Claimed escalator, reversed time. Terminated for drug suspicion. There's no evidence he was on anything, but there is security footage. I saw it, frame by frame. The escalator ran backwards, even though the switch was off. And at the top of the screen, barely visible, a blurry figure moves against the grain of reality. Then there was the janitor's closet, locked from the inside. When the morning crew pried it open last spring, They found a half-eaten sandwich, a mop, and a pair of worn-out shoes positioned like someone had been standing there, waiting. But no janitor, no prints, no name in the system. Just an old, folded piece of paper taped to the back of the door. Rules, handwritten, the same ones I would get from the man who claimed to clean the floors. Looking back, I don't know if I was hired or chosen. And if I just said no, just skip the call, I wouldn't be telling this story. But I did take the job. And what happened next was nothing I was trained for. Let me tell you about the rules, the ones that kept me alive. I didn't expect anyone to be there that night. But there he was, a janitor, leaning in the hallway just outside the security office, mop in hand and grin a little too wide to be comforting. "You must be the new guy," he said, like we'd done this before. I remember nodding, laughing awkwardly, trying to play off my nerves. Didn't know anyone else worked nights. They like to keep one of us around, he replied, to clean up the mess and give a little warning. That last part stopped me. Before I could ask what he meant, he reached into the inside pocket of his dusty work jacket and pulled out a crumpled piece of paper. "This'll help," he said, "if you want to make it through the night." I almost laughed. I wish I had. Instead, I took it. It was a handwritten list. Faint pencil marks, some smudged at the edges like it had been handled by trembling hands. 12 rules. No title. No explanation. Just rules. The first few seemed almost reasonable, until they weren't. Rule number 1. Check the security cameras every 15 to 30 minutes. But don't stare at the footage for too long. At first, I thought this was just a way to stay alert, keep from dozing off, but later, I'd learned the hard way. The footage on monitor 3, pointed at the central escalator, would flicker every so often. Static, distortion, and sometimes, just barely, you'd see movement, a figure, not walking, gliding, like its legs weren't real. One guard before me, Carlos. I learned his name from an old shift log, filed a complaint 2 years ago. Said the camera made him nauseous, gave him migraines. The report was marked, dismissed due to stress. But the tape exists. Frame by frame, you can see Carlos on screen, sitting in the office, staring too long, and then you see him fall forward. Nosebleed, seizure, unexplained spike in electromagnetic readings recorded that same hour. They say he never came back for his paycheck. Rule number 2. Never look directly at the mannequins after midnight. If they change position, leave immediately. That one got me. I laughed when I read it. I'd seen mannequins all over malls. They're just fiberglass and wires. Right? Wrong. It was close to 1 a.m. when I saw it. One mannequin in a clothing store had moved. Just a little, its arm, once down by its side, now bent at a sharp angle. Almost like it was reaching for something. I blinked, thought maybe I'd imagined it. I walked past the store again 10 minutes later. The mannequin had its head turned toward me. That was the moment I remembered the rule. I backed away, didn't take my eyes off it until I was halfway down the corridor. When I finally checked the footage from earlier, I nearly dropped the tablet. The camera had caught the mannequin stepping forward. No jump cut, just one slow, scraping movement, like bone over tile. No one believed the last guy who reported it. They should have. Rule number 3. If you hear a child laughing in the play area, leave immediately. The mall closes at 9. The play area is locked and empty by 9:15. So when I heard giggles echoing from the foam jungle gym around 2:30 a.m., I felt the cold sweat hit instantly. No footsteps, no voices, just laughter, distant, but clear. I didn't check the footage. I didn't look. I left. Later, I found an old news clipping in the back office filing cabinet. 1998. A child disappeared during a mall Easter event. Witnesses said she was playing alone in the tubes. Then just vanished. No trace. Her shoes were found near the slide. That's it. Rule number 4. If you check the time and it's earlier than the last time you looked, return to the security office immediately. This one sounds crazy, until it happens. I was doing rounds near the food court. Checked my watch. 12:48 a.m. 10 minutes later. I checked again. 11:32. I blinked. Checked the wall clock. It agreed. 11:32. The mall was trying to rewind me. Like it wanted to trap me in the loop. I ran. Didn't stop until the office door slammed shut behind me. When I opened my eyes, the clock ticked back to normal. 1:01 a.m. It let me go, that time. There were more rules. Don't open dressing room doors if you hear crying. Don't leave early. Don't let anyone in between 4 o'clock and 4:30 a.m., no matter who they sound like. Every one of them sounded more absurd than the last. Until you saw them in action. Here's what I think. The rules weren't warnings. They were bargains. Like the mall was saying, you follow my rules, and I'll let you live. Break them, and you don't disappear. You become part of the mall. One of the shadows. One of the mannequins. I've read old reports. Found scratches behind vent grates. Blood smears under the elevator panel. Security footage showing a figure in a janitor uniform walking past closed doors, in 2009. No one on payroll since 2007. You can believe it or not. I'm just telling you what I saw. What I lived through. But one thing I know for sure. Those rules saved my life. And the night wasn't even close to being over. Because next came the cameras, the ones that started watching me back. There's a kind of comfort in security footage. Static angles. Grainy black and white feeds. A sense of control, like no matter what's out there, you're watching it, not the other way around. The illusion of safety, of distance. But what no one ever tells you is that sometimes, the cameras look back, and when they do, you'll feel it. It started with the escalator. Monitor 3, center atrium, the one that made my skin crawl from the moment I stepped into the office. At 2:12 a.m., I heard the sound, low. Mechanical. Unmistakable. The escalator was running. Now, remember rule number 10. If you hear the escalator running, do not investigate. Watch it from the security camera only. So I did exactly that. I turned to the monitor. The escalator was moving, even though no one had turned it on. I could see the rubber steps rolling in slow, deliberate rhythm, but it was what was on the escalator that made my breath catch. There was a figure. Tall. Too tall. Its limbs looked wrong. Disproportionately long, bending slightly backward at the joints like a marionette with strings pulled the wrong way. It stood still at first, riding the escalator upward, like some mannequin that had come to life and decided to ascend. And then it moved, not off the escalator, not toward anything physical. It turned its head, slowly, deliberately, toward the camera. Its face, if you could call it that, was a blur. Not from bad resolution. It was like the face refused to be seen. Like the lens itself couldn't process it. Static began to ripple across the feed. Not all at once, just the corner. Then spreading, flickering like a dying fire. That's when the sound started. Buzzing, not from the speakers. In the room, around me. It felt like a fly inside my skull. Pushing pressure into my temples. My fingers went numb. My heart slammed into my ribs. And the figure? It leaned forward, as if trying to see me through the monitor. That was when I remembered rule number 1. Don't stare at the footage for too long. I slammed the monitor off. Just went black. The buzzing stopped. Instantly. I sat there in the dark. My breath coming in short. Desperate bursts. My hands were shaking. Not from fear, but from something else. Like my body had been invaded. That was the first time I truly understood. This mall didn't just house things. It fed them. And we, the watchers, were the bait. The next day, I reviewed old footage logs. I shouldn't have. There was a clip from January. A guard named Ellis, his last shift. At exactly 3:03 a.m., he's seen staring at monitor 3. 4 minutes go by. Then, he starts to bleed from the ears. He doesn't scream, doesn't move. He just sits there, expression blank, until he slumps out of frame. No one found his body. The office was empty when the morning staff arrived. The footage was flagged, but the report said, hardware glitch. Except there were smudges on the monitor. Greasy fingerprints. Not from inside the room, on the screen itself. Like someone had pressed their face to the other side of the glass. I'm not saying I understand it. I don't, but I know what it felt like. It felt like something watching me back. And here's the part that's hard to say out loud. I started to feel it even when the monitors were off. Like the lens had turned inward. Like I wasn't in control anymore. There's a theory in paranormal research. A weird one I read on some dusty forum after this all happened. It says that surveillance equipment can become possessed in spaces where memory and energy get trapped. Places like malls. Buildings that once held life and movement. Now left hollow. The rituals of human commerce and noise replaced by silence. And that silence? It echoes long enough, and something might start answering back. That night, I stopped looking at the monitors unless I absolutely had to. I turned off the lights in the office and sat in the dark. Because somehow it felt safer not being seen. And that's when I learned something terrifyingly simple. Security cameras aren't just for watching. They're for feeding. Because once they know you're watching, they start watching you, too. And if you stare too long, they remember you. But the worst came later, when something knocked on the door that shouldn't have known I was there. And it spoke in the janitor's voice. You know that feeling when you've been talking to someone, and suddenly, you realize you don't actually know who they are? That's what it felt like when Mr. Hensley looked me dead in the eye and said, "We don't have a night janitor." It was 6:07 a.m. I had just survived the worst shift of my life. I was shaking. My voice was barely holding together. And before I handed over my keys and walked away forever, I asked him, casually. I thought, "So, who's the janitor on night duty?" He looked confused. Not annoyed. Not dismissive. Confused. "We don't have anyone else here overnight. Just you." I stared at him. For a second, I thought he was joking. That maybe this was part of some elaborate test. A sick initiation. But he was serious. Dead serious. I pressed. Described the guy, late 50s. Work boots. Mop. Gray uniform. Slight limp. Handed me the list. Warned me about the rules. Hensley's expression shifted, just slightly. Something like concern. Or pity. "I've heard stories," he said quietly. "But no one's been assigned janitorial duties on the night shift for over 15 years. That's when the world tilted a little. Because this man, this janitor, was the first person I met that night. The one who warned me. Helped me. The reason I didn't die before 2 a.m. So if he wasn't real, what was he? After that conversation, I did what anyone with a mind full of holes would do. I dug deeper. Back in the office archives, yes. The same metal filing cabinets no one bothers to lock. I found something odd. An old incident report from 2009. A water pipe had burst in the East Wing, and a man named Walter D. Kells was noted as the responding janitor. The log listed his employee ID, date of hire, and uniform code. The issue? The record was crossed out in red ink, marked, inactive 2007, 2 years before the report was filed. And then it got stranger. In that same folder, stuffed between moldy training manuals and unused hazard stickers, was a worn, stained piece of paper. The rules. The exact same ones I'd been handed. Same order. Same handwriting. Same smudged fingerprints in the corner. And on the back? The name, Kells. I tracked down a man who used to work maintenance at the mall, old guy named Royce. I found him through a Facebook group for former employees. After a bit of small talk and a lot of hesitation, he told me what he remembered. Kells was a good guy. Quiet. Always stayed late. Too late. Sometimes. He was the one who wrote the first version of the rule list. What happened to him? I asked. Royce paused, then said, he stayed one night too long. Apparently, after a power outage one December evening, Kells went to fix a light panel near the play area. He never clocked out. His keys were found near the escalator the next morning, still warm to the touch. But Kells was never seen again. And yet, I saw him. I spoke to him. More than once. The last time was around 4 a.m., near the end of my shift. I had just escaped that thing outside the door, the one pretending to be him. The one that knocked in his voice. I was rattled, barely standing. I stepped out of the office, trying to breathe, and he was there again, leaning against the wall. Like nothing had happened. Same uniform, same kind smile. "Rough night?" he asked. I didn't know what to say. He looked at me, serious for once. "You followed the rules, didn't you?" I tried. I muttered, "What is this place? Why do the rules matter?" He gave a tired smile, one filled with something heavy. "There's more going on here than you understand," he said softly. "Much more." I stepped toward him, desperate for answers. "What do you mean?" But he didn't respond. He turned and walked down the corridor. I followed, rounded the corner. Gone. Again. No sound. No door. No trace. You can call it a ghost. Or a hallucination. Or a leftover echo of guilt the building didn't know how to let go of. But here's what I believe. Walter Kells never left that mall. Not because he's trapped. Because he chose to stay. To warn the next fool who walked through those doors thinking it was just another job. He became the mall's conscience. Its whisper in the dark. The last flicker of human instinct before something else pulls you under. And I listened. Because of him, I made it out. But as I would learn soon enough, just making it to morning doesn't mean you're safe. Not when the crying starts. Not when she finds you. When I handed Mr. Hensley my keys that morning, I thought it was over. I didn't explain, didn't tell him about the woman outside the door, or the mannequin that moved, or the escalator that stared back. I just said, I'm done, and walked out. Simple. Final. But here's the thing about places like that mall. They don't care if you clock out. They come home with you anyway. It started subtle. That night, I got into bed and stared at the ceiling for hours. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw static, not in my mind, in my vision, like old VHS tape fuzz, bleeding into the darkness. At one point, I swear I heard something buzzing faintly in the corner of the room. I thought it was a fly. Then I realized it was the same sound the monitor made just before the escalator figure looked at me. I unplugged my TV, covered the screen with a blanket. Didn't help. 3 days later, I found the list, folded inside the glove box of my truck. The same list of rules, same pencil marks, same smudged fingerprint in the corner. I hadn't taken it with me. I left it on the desk. But there it was, just sitting between my insurance papers and an old bottle of ibuprofen, like it had followed me. And then came the mirrors. The bathroom mirror steamed up after a shower, like it always did, but this time, when I wiped it, something was already written in the fog. Still watching? I didn't sleep that night. I started researching haunted locations, liminal spaces, energy residue, every rabbit hole the internet could offer. And one post stood out. A former mall worker from Minnesota wrote something that hit me in the chest like a hammer. I don't think these places are haunted the way we imagine. I think they remember. They remember us. And if you leave too fast, they notice. So I called Royce again, the former maintenance guy who told me about Walter Kells. I asked him one last question. Did anything ever follow you home? He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, not home, but sometimes I hear mopping. In places where no one's cleaning. What do you do with something like that? You can't burn it. You can't explain it. You just live with it. Or try to. It's been months now. Sometimes I dream I'm still in the mall. Not walking, floating, through the food court, down the toy aisle, past mannequins with no faces and mirrors that don't reflect me back. In those dreams, I'm not watching anymore. I'm being watched. And I always wake up at 11:30 p.m. Here's what I know, and what you should never forget. Some buildings aren't just empty. They absorb routine, memory, fear. They echo your footsteps until the sound becomes theirs. And if you're not careful, if you don't follow the rules, they remember your name. If you're thinking about taking a job like mine, let me leave you with this. Don't trust the cameras. Don't answer the knock. And if someone hands you a list, read it like your life depends on it. Because it does. Some malls don't close. And some stories don't end just because you walked out the door.